Welcome to today's show. Today I'm going to be breaking down the final sets of the top 50 prospects in this 2019 NFL Draft. In the Part 1 series, we covered the second and third round selections that I think are worthy in this top 50 list. To recap, at number 19 we had offensive tackle Cody Ford, who I think is the first guy I would select in the first round. He's compared to a Brandon Brooks because he played both tackle and guard, being listed as the 26 out of 100 NFL Network ranking. And he's coming out of Oklahoma, so you know he's a good player. Number 18 on this list is linebacker Devin White. He's out of LSU. He's 20 years old, so he's one of the younger guys in this draft class. And during his time in college, he had 286 tackles, 29 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, 1 interception, 4 forced fumbles. This past season, though, he had 123 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. This is a guy that many people are comparing to a Myles Jack, which is pretty great if you can really get a Myles Jack out of this guy. NFL Network ranks him 6 out of 100 on their top 100, and I think he's definitely a first-round talent. Number 17 on this list is defensive end Montez Sweat. He is 22 years old, coming out of Mississippi State. He had a total of 105 tackles, 31 tackles for loss, 23.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. This past season, he had 53 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 12 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. He is listed as number 17 out of 100 in the NFL Network rankings. He is a guy being compared to a Danielle Hunter with Minnesota Vikings. He's very good off the edge. Not the best run stopper, but he can definitely get to the quarterback and create some sacks and pressure for you. Number 16 on this list is defensive tackle Quinnen Williams. He is 21 years old, out of Alabama, with a total of 91 tackles, 26 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, and this past season was really his greatest season in college, with 71 tackles, 20 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. This is the best defensive tackle in this draft class, by all means. The fact that he had 71 tackles really shows you that he's creating so much disruption at the line of scrimmage, and then even getting several tackles for loss. And then he's also to create pressure. So this is a guy that isn't an Aaron Donald, but many have compared him to Jonathan Allen, and he is actually number 2 out of 100 in the NFL Network ranking system. Definitely a first-round talent, in my opinion. Number 15 on this list is a guy that I mentioned before there's a couple unrated guys that NFL Network did not have in their top 100. This is one of the guys. This is a linebacker out of Kansas named Joe Dineen Jr. He is 21 years old. During his time in Kansas, he had 382 tackles, 42 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, and 1 interception. This is an old school guy. He's a guy that is going to create a lot of disruption in the run game. He will not allow running backs to get a whole lot of yards. He's a tackling machine. For example, this past season he had 142 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 1 interception. I compare him to Paul Posluszny, formerly of the Buffalo Bills and Jacksonville Jaguars. He is absolutely a great leader. You're getting a great middle linebacker out of this guy. The fact that he was not in the NFL Network rankings out of 100, being unrated, is just totally a brain confuser to me. It confuses me. I don't understand why people aren't talking about this guy. In my opinion, he's definitely a first-round talent. Heading into 14 is to tight end Jace Sternberger. Some people have him a little bit lower on the tight end list. I have him actually higher. I think he's the second best tight end coming out of this NFL draft class, and he's only 21 years old, out of Texas A&M, and he had 837 receiving yards with 10 touchdowns, 49 receptions with a 17.1 yards per reception average. The interesting thing about Jace Sternberger is this past season, he was creating most of his production in his total time in college. He's very new to football. He's played several other different types of sports, succeeded in all those areas, This past season, he had 832 receiving yards with 10 touchdowns, 48 receptions, and a 17.3 yards per reception. Obviously, he's a vertical threat. He's not the best run blocking tight end, but he can do it decently. And he's actually listed at number 77 out of 100 in the NFL Network ranking system. Many people are comparing him to Jacob Tamme, mainly because Jay Sternberger can play both fullback and tight end. He's that hybrid kind of player, which I like a lot. Obviously, Jacob Tamme was a great tight end. Started for some teams, was a great backup for many other ones. And I think Jay should definitely be targeted in the first round. Number 13 on this list is a linebacker, Ben Burr-Kirven. He is 21 years old, out of Washington, where he had a total of 338 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 4 interceptions, and 6 forced fumbles. This past season, he had a league collegiate high 176 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles. This is, in my opinion, the best linebacker coming out of this NFL draft. He is actually listed 94 out of 100 in the NFL Network rankings. He's being compared to a Jayon Brown of the Tennessee Titans. I'm not sure why people aren't having him as high as I do. In my opinion, he's kind of like Joe Dineen Jr., where he's able to create a lot of tackles. The great thing about Ben compared to Joe was the fact that he's able to get more interceptions. He's more of a turnover machine than Joe Dineen was, but he's definitely a first-round talent in my opinion. Heading into number 12 is offensive guard Jonah Williams out of Washington. He's rated as the number 20 out of 100 NFL Network rankings. People are comparing him to a Jake Matthews of the Atlanta Falcons. Jonah Williams is a guy that can play both guard and tackle, and I think he is absolutely, if you have him at guard, the best guard in this draft. He is definitely a first-round talent. Heading into number 11 is the best offensive tackle in this NFL draft, Jawaan Taylor out of Florida. He is listed as number 14 out of 100 in the NFL Network rankings. He's being compared to Vernon Carey, formerly of the Miami Dolphins. Vernon Carey, much like Jawaan Taylor, are guys that can play both guard and tackle. That versatility is very useful on the offensive line. In case you have injuries or you have other players already playing either a guard or starting tackle position, you can move them around. And that's very important for teams that are weak on the offensive line side of football. Number 10 on this list is wide receiver A.J. Brown out of Mississippi. He had a total of 2,984 receiving yards with 19 touchdowns, 189 receptions, and 15.8 yards per reception average. Out of 2018 to 2019, this past season, he had 1,320 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, 85 receptions, and a 15.5 yards per reception average. Many people are comparing him to Juju Smith-Schuster with the Pittsburgh Steelers, being listed at 36 out of 100 in the NFL Network rankings. This is a guy that is definitely someone you can have on the outside or inside. He will be a day one starter for you, bringing a very productive wide receiver that has proved himself consistently throughout his college time. Should be able to do the same in the NFL. Number 9 on this list is defensive end Nick Bosa. Yes, I know it's a little bit surprising that I have Nick Bosa a little bit lower on the list than most people. It's not that I don't think Nick Bosa is going to be talented, it's just the issue was that Nick Bosa was injured. He didn't play the full season in his senior year. But in his total time with Ohio State, he had 77 tackles, 29 tackles for loss, 17.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. He only played a couple games in his senior year, where he had 14 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. I think this is a guy that hasn't quite proven himself, but he needs to. This is a guy that I compare to actually his brother Joey Bosa out of the not San Diego anymore, Los Angeles Chargers. NFL Network has him as the best player coming out of this draft, and number 1 out of 100. I say he's number 9, but he is definitely a first-round talent. Number 8 on this list is safety Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He's 21 years old, out of Florida, with a total of 161 tackles, 9 interceptions, 4 sacks, 12 passes defensed. This past season, he had 71 tackles, 4 interceptions, 3 sacks, and 2 passes defensed. This is a guy that's playing the safety position and just creating so much havoc on the deep end and the box everywhere. And he's able to be a good tackler as well, which is impressive. NFL Network ranks him 54 out of 100 in the ranking system, and people are comparing him to a Nate Allen, formerly of the Philadelphia Eagles and Oakland Raiders. In my opinion, he is a first-round talent, and he is the best safety coming out of this NFL draft. Number 7 on this list is Marquise Brown, otherwise known as Hollywood. He is 21 years old, coming out of Oklahoma, with 2,413 receiving yards with 17 touchdowns, 132 receptions, and an 18.3 yards per reception average. This past season, he had 1,318 receiving yards with 10 touchdowns, 75 receptions, and a 17.6 yards per reception average. This is a guy that is being compared to a Deshaun Jackson, and I would agree with that. NFL Network ranked him as 16 out of 100 in the total ranking system, and he is a first-round talent. Marquise Brown's an interesting player to watch. Looking at his tape, he's very smart, and he's a guy that, given some development over the next couple years in the NFL, he will be able to be a starter, obviously, but he will not only be able to play the slot, which was where he's probably going to play in his rookie year, he'll be able to expand outward into the outside spot and play over there as well. Is he going to be as good as Antonio Brown? Who knows? He might be. Number 6 on this list is quarterback Kyler Murray. He is 21 years old, out of Oklahoma, with a total of 5,406 passing yards, 50 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and 67.5 completion average. This past season, he had 4,361 passing yards with 42 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a 69% completion average. Very impressive. The only thing about him is that he's 5'10". There's nothing wrong with that. There's been small quarterbacks, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Doug Flutie, who have been successful in the NFL level. He is actually compared to a Russell Wilson in this NFL draft, and he's ranked at the number 11 out of 100 in this ranking system on NFL Network. And I think he is the second best quarterback in this NFL draft. Number 5 on this list, the top 5, is a surprising player. This is the other guy that I have as unrated, but he is just a total sleeper. Nobody's talking about this guy, really. And NFL Network doesn't even have him in the top 100. But this guy is a wide receiver out of Massachusetts named Andy Isabella. He is 21 years old with 3,526 receiving yards with 30 touchdowns, 231 receptions, and a 15.3 yards per reception average. This past season, he led the league of college with 1,698 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns, 102 receptions, and a 16.6 yards per reception average. Clearly, this guy knows how to play football. Is he going to expand and be successful in the NFL? You better believe it. If you don't think so, then you aren't watching this tape. I would compare him to a Wes Welker, formerly of the Miami Dolphins, Patriots, and Denver Broncos, with the Rams in there for a little stint, and I think he will definitely be successful, maybe even more successful than Wes Welker was. Number 4 on this list is the best